Before I start this recording, I just want to make sure that whoever is listening is okay. The world at large right now has been going through a lot. And it particularly seems so because problems that seem to once only affect third world in heavy quotes countries are now affecting the Western world. So over the weekend, we saw large-scale display of force from Iran and Israel and the United States. Many hotspots were targeted in the process. Lives have been lost. Tragically, 80 girls, young girls, who probably fought to go to school, considering where that school was in Iran, died in a strike. The Ayatollah equally died. So, of course, today is March 2nd. There's still traces of back and forth going on. But my hope is, wherever you are, listening to this either today, tomorrow, sometime 10 years beyond now, whenever, wherever you are, that you're okay, and that whatever these problems we're facing as a cause of people we don't even know, or people we know, our individual level problems, our national level problems, my hope is at some point we just grow up. We just grow up. And part of the things that I wanted to discuss in this recording actually speaks to this why can't we just grow up sentiment. This recording is just me addressing various sentiments that I came across during the week while doom scrolling my life away. So I put them in bullet points. The first one that I saw is a loose quote from a video I saw while doom scrolling on Instagram. And the quote goes, "We all believe in a different imaginary friend. This is why war starts." 100%. Not only, but at least a lot of our earlier wars were definitely started by this. And the thing is, war doesn't always need to be large scale. Obviously, in the grammatical sense, the English language sense, war is used only when it's large scale. But on the intraperson level, the difference in beliefs, even within the same religion, mind you, is the cause for many minute conflicts that eventually birth the bigger conflicts, that some of which go on to become full-scale wars involving multiple nations. It starts with, "Oh, don't talk to her, she's a Muslim. Oh, those ones, they go to deeper life. We were Anglican." That's how these things start. You condition children's minds to other people based on things not even they believe, but their parents believe. Now, how do their parents believe? You don't even ask questions. Their parents believe because their parents believed. And then you now trace it. You now start finding out names like Usman Dadfodio and Samuel Ajayi Crowder and the Europeans who even brought the thing, Christianity, and then the traders who brought Islam. But even before Christianity and Islam, even before those ones, we still had traces of it in form of what we call traditional religion in Nigeria. Although the thing is, we have very limited written and accurate documentation about how those things played out in that time for us to say if they were the focal points behind conflicts that our ancestors as Nigerians could have had. But part of the main cause for inter-person conflict in Nigeria, in many countries today, is the fact that, whatever I believe in about the afterlife is different from what you believe in, so therefore you are in some way inferior to me. Or worse off, you are blasphemous because you do not believe the thing that I know that you didn't even have any control in believing, but I'm still going to hold that against you. It's funny now being so far removed between me and you. Even as a child, I always went to very, 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 very Christian schools. Effectively, every school in this state that I grew up in was a Christian school. So this isn't my parents filtering their way or trying to be selective about the schools that I went to. Effectively, every school in the state that I grew up in is a Christian school. So they would obviously during a Bible knowledge class. So in Nigeria, we don't have religious education. We have either Christian religious studies or Islamic religion studies. It's not combined. Even our history lecturers don't really go into religion like that. They just tell you, this is how this empire started and this one died and all of that. So in Bible knowledge class, when I was like 5, I will never forget this woman, my teacher at the time. I used to like those classes because they would show you pictures. So this woman with this Afro wig, I will never forget, was telling us the story about Jonah. And, she's telling the story, moving around with the pictures. My eyes are just distracted by how immaculate the pictures were in that yellow hardcover Bible. And then somewhere she now says, the fish swallowed Jonah. I was like, what? Oh, God. So another one is when I was 6, can't remember the exact class, but when I was 6, I think this should be primary 1, I was in class and then the same Bible knowledge. This woman, my teacher, pregnant, random detail. But she mentions that God told the tribe, I think the Israelites, I'm not sure, but he told the king and his tribe, I can't remember the exact king and tribe, to kill the Amalekites. Now, I can't forget the Amalekites because they were the victims in this story. And then she now said that God punished him because he didn't kill the king. And my jaw literally dropped like, what? I am saying these things to say that even within that fundamental age where you think the indoctrination ought to work, just saying some of these stories can trigger your children that you hope will be as indoctrinated as you are down paths of abstinence. So for me, I really grappled with that whole concept of, I don't want to call it an imaginary friend, but a companion unseen. All right. I really, really struggled, both in normal school during Bible knowledge, both in Sunday schools at church services. I struggled. I would memorize all those memory verses because they would give you little rewards like Capri Sun or 2 stickers on your book. All those things would trip children, right? I could memorize words. That's not a difficult task for what's a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old. But when it came to actually believing it, I noticed I struggled, especially in comparison to my classmates at the time who they were what we would describe as fervent Christians. They had very, very radical exposures to different forms of Christianity right early on. And I wonder why that was. It wasn't until I got to 200 level. Now, by 200 level, I had already developed some form of praying mechanism, but it wasn't even necessarily that I had a picture of the God of the Bible in mind. But it was just me calling out. I didn't call it the universe, but it was just me calling out to who can listen. I want to pass. So it was in 200 level that I met the first person that identified unshakenly as an atheist. And I was like, oh, so that's an option. And then he now told me his story. It was like, he never just believed, like when he was 5 or something. The same when he was 15, I think it was similar to my own when he was 15. He told me that he never really believed anything, that he just started asking questions and then it stopped. And that he doesn't pray, he just takes life as it comes. When there's tragedy, there's tragedy. You understand? And that he explains that whenever things work in his favor, it's just coincidence that his mind wanted it to work that way and stuff like that, really. And then oddly enough, another day, that same second year in school, I was in a pre-exam class, all those pre-exam classes that are always empty because people are too busy reading. So I was in a pre-exam class and then it was a philosophy class. So I answered a question and then this guy now looks at me like, are you an agnostic? And then I didn't even know what an agnostic was. I thought maybe agnosticism was some branch of Christianity. And then he now tells me, after much, prodding and asking me very intense questions that I never expected from him, because it was somebody in my class that I'd never spoken to ever up until that point. And then he now blurts out that he too is an atheist. I was like, oh, so these people exist. So in that year, I think I even met another one too, but I can't remember the story behind that one. So in that year, in a very religious, very right-wing religious psychosis to the extreme exponents school, I could meet within a year, within a semester, not even a year, 3 solid atheists, which was insane. I never imagined that would happen. So it had me thinking like, okay, I know for a fact that these 3 people grew up in the same right-wing circles that I grew up in. How did they reach the point that they could boldly proclaim themselves as atheists? So I, myopically just decipher that, oh, it's because they are rich. But no, I would, with time, growing up, 300 level, 400 level, and 500, I would equally meet other people from different walks of life, different classes in life that weren't Christians, despite growing up in Christian circles. So if that indoctrination couldn't have worked, then what then is the point of trying to just keep up with these things that we're beating ourselves over for? You just wake up in a house as a child. You're born as a child, some random house in Rivers State or in Bayelsa. The next thing they'll tell you, you just find yourself in a bowl of water with a pastor speaking words over your head. As you grow up, you find out, oh, we're Catholic. Don't talk to how those ones they go to. If I don't want to single out any church or institution in particular, but yeah, it's not just we are Catholic. It is we are Catholic and we hate these people. It is we are Catholic and we hate this group of people, which ought not to be. So the children that the indoctrination works on, which is the majority, all right, the 3 and eventually like 10 people that I would meet in school are a very small minority. So the few, or the many children that this indoctrination will work on are the ones that will grow up and start to post things like Nigeria should be separated or should be split into two. Not for any actual reason, but just because the North comprises mainly of Muslims. Now, if you ask that same person, if they're from the Southwest, you will see that they have relatives in Kwara. Some of them have relatives even in core North states that are Muslim and live there. It even makes me laugh when they come to this Nigeria should divide thing from the religious angle, because even in the South, even in Nigeria's premier city, Lagos, there is a big presence of Muslims. Yet some myopic individual just sit back behind his keyboard and think Islam is the issue, when the thing is, the root issue isn't one, it is all. If we're to make that an issue, we've lived life for what feels like centuries now, pretending that this isn't an issue. Even making constitutional amendments around the dictates of these practices, these popular practices, yet all of a sudden, these bodies, these institutions that have existed since before you were born, since before basically anyone alive today was born, are now the issue. Magic. It's either they are all the issue, or you just allow things to continue as they are. They are either all the issue or you let them continue. You can't say one is different from the other. They all function from the same headspace. So, so that statement isn't uniquely true, but has been true, especially in historical contexts. That is, we all believe in a different imaginary friend, and this is why war starts. The second statement that I have here is billionaires should not exist. Now, if what I would call spirituality, not religion now, if it's taught me anything, is that you ought not to describe things within current context. So take, for example, $100 in 1945 isn't $100 in 2026. By that perspective, $1 million in 1945 isn't $1 million in 2026. So address the root problem, because a billionaire today could be the equivalent of someone with a few cents tomorrow. Address the root problem. Your root problem is vast wealth inequality. Now, this is entirely a capitalist problem. Your root problem is even capitalism, because capitalism is functioning as designed. So all your taxing, the loopholes just make themselves. You don't even need the lobbying or anything. The loopholes will just keep making themselves, and you find yourself, after taxing upwards of 90% even, you still find yourself with the same issue. So your issue is vast income inequality. That is your issue. It's not that billionaires won't exist. Provided capitalism exists wherever you are living, billionaires will always exist. All right? Even you can say, oh, let them raise the minimum wage. You would just find yourself back in the same problem, because the thing is, after a minimum wage is raised, the standards, the prices, everything goes up with it. Gradually, surely, but slowly. Or slowly but surely. So this statement really means wealth inequality ought not to exist. And that is fundamentally contrary to the capitalist system. All right, that is why many people have been correct in pointing out that capitalism truly is the problem. And the thing, when I say capitalism, I'm not talking about how Adam Smith defined it within some book. I'm saying the sentiment that capitalism mirrors, which is a conversation I was having just yesterday, that the sentiment that capitalism mirrors is the sentiment that supports this vast income inequality. And what is that sentiment? There's a reason why communism is associated with being progressive and capitalism is being associated with being right-wing or conservative. Right-wing people, right, support superficial hierarchies of which money falls neatly into the equation. So therefore, their sentiment favors capitalism without guardrails. Of course, capitalism without guardrails is going to lead to chattel slavery. Period. As evidenced by the United States and the Western world for centuries. So, when I personally say capitalism, I'm talking about the sentiment of superficial hierarchy, which supports capitalism, which is the dominant sentiment among people in the United States, as evidenced by the swearing in of Donald Trump as the popularly elected president of the United States. So, this statement made within the context of capitalism is false. All right? Wherever you have money, you will always have some form of inequality. It's only in a system that echoes the progressive communist sentiment, where money isn't even a thing to begin with, that you can't even think of having this problem of billionaires. So within a capitalist system, you trying to take down billionaires is just you playing, is it whack-a-mole now? You're wasting your time, as far as I'm concerned. I'm not saying this to refute your efforts or belittle your efforts, but realistically, within capitalism as it's practiced now, as it is, not even as it's practiced now, because whatever guardrails we have against capitalism are communist ideas. So capitalism as its core will always produce vast inequality, which is the appeal that it has for conservatives, right-wing people, and people that support the idea. So that's just my take on that sentiment. Then the next one, I have 6 of these. The next statement here is, I'm sorry. I'd rather be too woke because women voting was considered woke. Yes, this is one statement that I agree with. And it's actually my guiding principle behind how I look at many issues today. So, as I've mentioned before, I went down the alt-right rabbit hole at some point in my life, just starting from 2020 actively. And, you know, the non-issue of the LGBT community or the queer community was an easy punching bag. The very light non-issue of the queer community was a popular punching bag in the alt-right back then. It still very much is, as evidenced by the fact that I read that they are revoking the driver's license of transgender people in 2026 in the United States. So, back when I was still within this alt-right rabbit hole, I would be in spaces or listen to people where they would reinforce the idea that everything queerness is madness, everything queerness is madness, this is madness, this is madness, this is madness. And I never internalized those beliefs, but they did ring into my subconscious, because even when I would see those issues being brought up in a serious context, I wouldn't pay them much mind. But as time progressed and I began to apply empathy to things, I now began to ask myself, like, what then truly is this? What is this? What am I being told? And what is this? Learning actual facts are not facts as presented by Ben Shapiro on a Monday morning is two different things. There are two different approaches to life. To actually learn what something is and to know what something is, or to just hear about what something is. It's two different things. So with time, I got to know. And not only did I know, but I became so maddened that something that is emphatically a non-issue has gone through the range of being at some point being labeled a mental illness to even till today being still labeled a mental illness by even the richest person in the world, so to say. Literally people's existence that just doesn't conform to what someone's idea of the norm is labeled a mental illness. It's insane, in my opinion. But obviously, people who operate within that framework don't see it as insane, but they see themselves as sane and feel like anything that doesn't match them is insanity, which it isn't. So, woke, even the word woke has gone from meaning just past tense of wake to being a compliment in terms of being aware of political issues to now being an insult, effectively. I'd rather be woke than be a passive centrist, which is one of the worst things, in my opinion, somebody can be in this life. I'm sorry. I'm not even sorry, because why? At least if you were a conservative, we know that, okay, this is your starting point. Let's work somewhere. But when you are a fence sitter, intentional fence sitter, what is your aim? So, yeah, me personally, I'd rather be on not necessarily the progressive side per se. That is the progressive side being dominated by Twitter spaces or what. I'm saying I'd rather think about things than just accept things. I'd rather apply empathy to case-by-case situations, be it today is queerness, tomorrow could be, racism is getting back on the block. Let's be real. Little by little, I was just seeing it small. They just haven't figured out how to do it without getting called out instantly. But it's getting there. It's well within the works. Take it from someone who was within the alt-right. It's until I completely detached that I noticed, oh, this was racist. This was very racist. And I didn't even notice it because they don't even market it as racist, which is why when people say, oh, I'm not racist, the thing is, the racism that you're talking about is more of implicit bias that manifests into something that, looking back, it has been racist. It starts with, oh, I don't date black girls. That we're even going for, it starts with smaller things like, let me try and remember a practical example. It starts with smaller things like good one, 1350. 13% of the population committing 50% of the crime. It starts with constantly bringing it up within debates. It starts with constantly bringing up DEI within college systems and all of that. That's how it starts. Then it now starts to get to a point of, balance. Then the scales eventually get tipped. So I'd rather think, not necessarily be too woke, if woke means aligning with whatever the progressive talking point of the day is. That isn't necessarily the goal. I'd rather think deeply on things, all right, and then understand different perspectives when I'm not in doubt, when I'm in doubt of things. So yeah, that's a statement that I agree with. I'd rather be too woke because women voting was once considered woke. The fourth statement came from a video I saw in Instagram on while doom scrolling, and that was okay. This isn't a statement, but this is like a summary of what the person was talking about in the video. And this was the person talking about people who pray for themselves in the face of other people's adversity. This is popular in Nigeria. I don't know if it's popular in the West or whatever country you're listening to this from is. In Nigeria, in many Nigerian social media platforms, blog comments and what that, many times there would be a reporting of, oh, someone lost a child or someone died. And then the comments are just filled with, may it not happen to us. Oh my God. Oh man, it's insane. It's exhausting how people, by the way, that is, someone posted themselves saying that they lost a child, and under that person's comments is where somebody else is saying, may it not happen to me. Like, how can I even describe the level of passive lack of self-awareness? Because I won't even call it wickedness. These comments are from a wicked place, obviously, but the fact that your priority at that point was to shield yourself from tragedy than to empathize with who's sharing their very real tragedy is baffling to me. Why is it that culture of always not giving a damn about the next person and just praying that yours is better than theirs? Not even yours is good, but yours is better than theirs. So if they have 20 naira, you have 30 naira, you are happy. That is the plight of many people in this society that I've familiarized myself with. From my anecdotal experience, I doubt it's the same everywhere. So, just coming under the person's page, it's not even from like a blog report, the person's page. And then you comment something like, oh, may it not happen to me. In other words, wow, the person forgot to pray. Yeesh. Well, that's just it. I don't really have anything to say about that. Just, it might even be just a matter of opinion, but to me, that's tasteless, to put it lightly. Fifth point I have here is queerness is a Western import. I think I've talked about this one before. It's not. I mean, it's simply not. And people trying to lose brain cells over the idea of legalizing what ought to not even be a case for the Constitution, both illegal or illegal, just something that exists, is baffling to me, but it's simply not really. I think what triggered this was, okay, yeah, I saw some comments about Senegal. I think there's some reports about Senegal amplifying punishments for queer individuals and all of that. Man, I really do not know why, there's such formalization of these things. It is, number one, unnecessary, and then number two, by extension, cruel, because you are punishing someone for something that doesn't affect anybody in society. Anybody, literally. Your ideas of it being harmful to society are from possibly even Western propaganda, case in point, religion, or misconceptions that you've had, misinformation is equally as tragic as lack of information. Of course, there's equally indoctrination playing its part there. So it's a tragedy that this is a popular belief within this part of the world and many parts of the world. In fact, everywhere in the world at this point, because I feel like we're in mask off season where the people who just pretended to get along with queer people, minority races, and all of that feel emboldened to take off their masks. Case in point, some of these podcasters and, politicians even. So it's a false statement. I don't know how else to describe it. People will argue their last breaths otherwise, but it's simply not a true statement. Last statement here. Oh, it's not. Okay, it's a linking statement to the last point. Okay, I think this is even what caused this. But it is Elon Musk calls transgenderism a mental illness. This isn't news. I don't know why this got picked up when I was adding things to this list. But this isn't news. Okay, him specifically, at some point, I believe he was, what would it be described today as woke? But how convenient that when he had the funds to really push for a presidential win and all of that. But prior to Donald Trump's win, he had been going down that alt-right rabbit hole. And I think he specifically, right, I don't want to really hold it out against him because I think for him specifically, he's engaging with these ideas out of genuine curiosity and not necessarily malice or bad intent. I think the same way I was able to fall down the alt-right rabbit hole, just out of genuine curiosity and not necessarily that I believed in being pro-life or being religious and all those things. I wasn't even anti-gay or anti-pro-choice or I don't even know, bro. Like they just somehow, I just found myself somehow Ben Shapiro in the morning, Tim Pool in the night, Candice so and so in the middle. Like I just found myself in those circles for some reason. I can't remember why exactly, but I just found myself there. And obviously some of their ideas that you can tolerate feed onto you or feed on you or latch onto you. So I think he's just going down that hole. And because he's a public figure, there's now an ego element to it that will make him more resistant to revert should he feel the need to revert. I found out not too long ago that he actually has a transgender daughter. I can only imagine how she feels seeing him make statements like this so brazenly. I hope she's okay. I really hope she's okay. But with him specifically, I think he's just falling down the alt-right rabbit hole the way any other guy or woman or person would fall down the alt-right rabbit hole. Do I think that he will recover? I don't know. I really do not know. He could possibly never publicly recover from any of this. But that I can observe, this just reads more of someone genuinely falling down that rabbit hole because some of the things, he's always posting studies to back up the things. That's how you know he isn't necessarily operating from a place of malice. He's operating based on actual genuine curiosity. And by obviously those studies are, unbeknownst to him, probably biased or from polluted samples or something, right? But I think in his case, he's just falling down very publicly down the alt-right rabbit hole. The thing is, a lot of all these celebrities don't have the luxury of being unknown. So take, for example, another person that's falling down the alt-right rabbit hole is Nicki Minaj. So the thing is, even if she should want to roll back or revert back, the ego element is there. The reputational damage element is there. I can't think of any celebrities who've rolled back completely. I can only think of the ones who've gone alt-right and haven't come back. Because the thing about the alt-right is they really ride out for their own. If your aim in life is to be a political commentator, even as a I'm progressive outright, as evidenced by my political compass test, even as a progressive, I would suggest doing it, even if just for the money. Do it the alt-right pipeline. You will make money. I guarantee you that you will be rich. There is no money in left-wing politics because left-wing politics is assumed to be just reality. Who is going to make money from saying the sun rises in the east and sets in the west? Who is going to make money from that? But when you tell people the earth is flat, when you tell people, white people actually are a superior race. Yes, I remember part of the things that, looking back, was racist. How they would always emphasize that white people developed civilization, that white people this, white people that. They will never acknowledge slavery. They will never acknowledge slavery, but it's always white people, white civilization, white civilization. I remember. Yeah, that's one of the things. So, think about it. If you want to go into a career of political entertainment, because it's not even news, please do the right wing thing. I'm not saying please like, oh, wow, because actually now I'm being the problem. Actually, scratch that. There are other ways to make money. Scratch that entirely. Please, scratch that entirely. Right? Scratch that entirely. I'm sorry. I am actually sorry. That's wrong thing. Actual wrong thing that, I'm encouraging people to do things that affect society in the long run for money. I just said that as an instance to point out that these people make more money staying within their alt-right rabbit holes than they do coming out. So, yeah, that's just it. I don't hold it against him. I wish him the best. I hope he makes public reversion, really, and snaps back to reality. And that whatever relationship between he and his daughter may be, I hope it's repaired, because I can't imagine that they have a good relationship. It can't be. Even watching the What is a Woman documentary back when I was still within the alt-right rabbit hole, I remember there were parents that even at some point the government had to step in and take their children away from their custody because their children were transgender. And then watching the documentary with the alt-right mind, I saw this as the government being wicked to the parents. But then again, looking back, you claim you love this person, but you can't meet them at a fundamental reality in their life. They're not even, saying that they believe in things that they're going to end up funding terrorism or acting as terrorists. No, they just want to live life in a way that you are unfamiliar with, but they are very much willing to explain. A harmless way of living life is what has you at the point of even the government interceding between you and your child. Well, different brains, different people, different learning rates, different societies, different levels of indoctrination. All of these things add up to make up the society we have today. That said, I think I'll call it the end now for this recording. Thank you for listening.